Thank you for joining us for this Repertoire podcast. And now, your host, Scott Adams.
Hey everybody, Scott Adams here with Repertoire Magazine. Today I get the fortunate opportunity to interview one of the most passionate, funny, great human beings in our industry who is going into the 2025 Hall of Fame, Jonathan Overbey. Jonathan has been a mentor and a friend to me over the last 20 years. It's been fun to watch him work. I love seeing somebody who's not only just passionate about what they do in our industry, he also gives back to it. He serves on boards with HIDA. He does all kinds of things around the industry. He's great at helping young reps, but he also teaches everybody that is around him, man, if you're not having fun, why are you doing this? And so looking forward to this conversation. And here we go with Jonathan Overbey. J.O., thank you for being on the podcast, man. And let me just start out by saying congratulations on your induction into the Hall of Fame this year with the 2025 class, the Legends of Lab. Today, I just literally want to thank you and for doing it and for being here, and congrats on the whole gig, my man.
Thank you so much, and thanks to you and obviously Pritch and everybody at Repertoire and Move and Share Media. It's a great honor, which I'm very humbled, and I'm very happy for Brad and Lisa as well.
Yeah, it's cool. It's been such a fun gig for me. I got to interview Brad this morning. Actually, I'm going to interview Lisa here in a week or so. But one thing that I asked Brad, I said, before we even get into business or whatever, talk a little bit about, you got such a cool, like, I've got to know your brother over the years, and I never got to meet your dad, but I know he was a really cool guy. And talk a little bit about your upbringing, your family, some of those things, and then we'll get into some industry stuff.
Sure. I grew up in Murray, Kentucky, 2 hours away from my current location here in Nashville. If you're not familiar with Murray, it's in the western corner of Kentucky. Murray State University is probably its biggest claim to fame. And my father was a local attorney in a small town. You do all types of law, except he didn't do criminal. He was a former city judge. He was a solicitor.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had a lot of things starting out his career, obviously, to build up his clientele. But he basically, with my grandfather, George Ed Overbey, started the Overbey law firm. But my dad's really the one that gave it legs. And, my grandfather was more like what they call a Southern gentleman. He had a farm that we had a 300-acre farm that had some cattle and raised a lot of tobacco and other things, but he also practiced law on the side. But when my dad got out of Vanderbilt Law, he really energized the firm. And then later on, my uncle joined. So it was Overbey and Overbey and Overbey. So we were kind of a big fish in a small pond, or at least we, grew up thinking that. So we never were wanting for much. My dad was always working, but it was great great town to grow up in. And family's really close. As you talked about, you met my brother Mark, older brother Mark. Have an older sister, Stacy. She lives in Zurich, Switzerland, and has been living there since the early 80s. So, for a couple of people from Callaway County and Murray, Kentucky, we've kind of branched out a lot. But owe that to our parents. They were very big proponents of education, and that as long as you could get into the school and you made the grades, they were willing to support that. And that was something that I've passed on to my children, that, you can never take education away. But grew up, playing golf, going to the country club, going sailing. My dad was a big sailor, did a lot of water skiing, a lot of outdoor sports. And so, as you know, we've played a lot of golf together. So I continue to do that. So great town, but also a good influence. My mother was highly educated, and obviously my dad was a lawyer. So a great atmosphere. Very lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like a high dollar life as a kid, similar to talking to Brad this morning. I learned something about him that I'd never known. He minored in French.
That guy is truly a man of many arts.
That is the truth.
As you know, every time I go do something with him, I mean, I could talk about Brad this whole time, between him being a certified airplane mechanic, and also to fly anything, and does fly, and I've flown with them, and his exploits on his motorcycle and his bicycle. I mean,
He can build a
Truly,
house from scratch. I mean,
yeah, truly a Renaissance man, but
he is.
big fan. But yeah, it wasn't so much high dollar because it was a small town, right? I mean,
Yeah. I'm just messing with you.
my father probably never made more than $50,000, which back then was still a lot of money. But yes, but you would have thought we were definitely living the dream, and that's the way I remembered it. It was a very bucolic upbringing.
Jo, how'd you get in the industry? Talk to me a little bit about that. Give me the background on that. I'm not sure I've ever asked you that or heard
I'm sure
from the
we've talked
beginnings.
about it, but it's probably many, many meetings ago, many bars ago. But I thought I was going to be a lawyer, like my father. I was going to be the only kid to be a lawyer. I was poli-sci major at Emory University, worked for one of the largest law firms as basically a gopher called Hansel and Post in Atlanta, way back in the day, and thought, okay, I'm going to go to law school. Well, I didn't do so great on my LSATs. I wasn't the best testers. I had the grades, but wasn't very good on LSATs. And then I got a job right out of college working for Harris 3M Lanier, selling copiers and fax machines back when fax machines were the hottest thing going. And I won't date myself too much. We'll get to that later. But enjoyed sales, was really good at it, I guess. Started making some money, and I'm like, well, when I'm selling all these fax machines, once they buy one, they don't need to see me anymore. And then, back in those days, there was an early recession then. I'm like, I got to get a new book of business almost every month or find new customers. And I'm like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I want to be in the medical field. I want to, at that time, as you probably remember, everybody thought they wanted to be a pharmaceutical rep or a pharma rep or, see these doctors on the regular and build long-term relationships with your accounts. And that's really what drove it. And so obviously I didn't get to go to work with a pharma company, but I was lucky to be interviewed by a guy by the name of Scott McGowan. Don't think Scott's in the business, been out for a while, but he was the regional manager for a little old company called Quidel. And I was there, got into our business as the Quidel rep for Georgia, Alabama, Middle Tennessee, and a little bit of South Carolina, if I think, but very lucky. And I won't tell you how long ago it was, but it was a long time ago.
Just the size of that territory tells you how long ago it was. They're in a territory like that in the country anymore.
Yeah, let's just say it was in the early 90s. I've been doing this for a while, very early 90s. But he gave me an opportunity and got in there. And this was obviously when Quidel was just establishing themselves. They were very, very small. We're just getting in with distribution. In fact, we didn't sell through distribution, which, as you know, I'm dedicated to and our company's dedicated to, until about 92, 91, and I started in 90. So we were selling a little allergy product and it was all direct. And I went out there and I didn't know I could make that much money and had just a wonderful time and, ran a territory and it went from there.
That's awesome, man. Before we get too deep into it, I asked Brad this question earlier today. What does the Hall of Fame mean to you?
Oh,
not for you personally going in, but just the entity of the Hall of Fame and some of the past inductees and some of that.
Well, like I said earlier, I certainly shouldn't even be mentioned in conversation with the past inductees. These are men and women that basically built businesses from nothing in some cases, or took companies that were small to great heights. All of them were wonderful mentors, the ones I did know, which is a big list of them in there that are in the Hall of Fame. I mean, all those people are just, like you said, titans of our industry, and it means a lot. Heck, as you know, Scotty, I've come to pretty much every one of them and I've always enjoyed the event, but the event's also what's good about it, as you know, is the continued networking that you do at these events, seeing old friends, as you probably quoted me as saying, and I've always said, is that I'm selling, if you will, to my friends now. I'm doing it so long that, we compete and we all got our, drawn outs, but I don't know many industries where we want to beat everybody during the day, but at night we're the best of friends and the camaraderie is great. And it's such a tight industry. And so, the Hall of Fame always I look forward to it because I know I'm going to see you as well as, everybody in our industry that has had a long career there, has also been very successful. And it's just a good group. And again, I am very humbled to be in this year's class.
Absolutely, man. You so deserve it. It's, I told Brad this morning, the Hall of Fame is more than just people who started businesses or have been in it a long time or at the end of their career. It's more for those people who don't just work in the industry, they're part of the industry and they give back to it and they do things to give back of themselves and to mentor others, and they're genuinely part of the industry. It's not just a job for them. It's a career, and it's where you and I talk about this offline all the time. It's where my best friends are across this industry. You obviously being one of them, and I love it. And I'm so thankful for it and thankful that, Repertoire is still here 31 years later and we're getting to host it. It's a really, really cool thing. Jo, we mentioned some of these titans, obviously from the Hall of Fame. Are there one or two mentors kind of across your career, maybe in the Hall of Fame, maybe not, that, had a big impact on your career, maybe even your life? Pivotal moments, I guess, across your time in the industry.
Absolutely. As you know, again, aging myself, I knew pretty much everybody that's gone into the hall personally and professionally, but very good friends. And I've been very, very, very lucky to have so many mentors and people that have took an interest in my career as well as my personal life. But I mean, right off the bat, Brad Kinnett, I could go on with, John Sasson, of course. My first mentor in the business was Scott Glenn. If you don't remember Scott was the former CEO years and years ago of Quidel, who brought me in the house into Quidel as out of the field into marketing, and where I learned a lot from him on how to run a company. He was one of the youngest CEO presidents of a company at the time, was a member of the Young Presidents Club. And Scott took little old 24-year-old Jonathan Overbey out to some of these young presidents organization meetings and introduced me around. And Scott was probably barely 40 himself, might have been under because it was the Young Presidents Club. But, again, I could go on and on. I mean, Rob Sarin, obviously a Hall of Famer, if I didn't mention him already. Brad, I've mentioned. Rick Frey, of course, was a great mentor of mine and took me under his wing, if you will, when I first got to managing people. I already mentioned John said, I mean, I can go on and on. So yes, it's been lucky, Don Kitzmuller, gosh, Don and Fanning, all those guys were obviously something I looked up to. Dwight Titus. I mean, I could just go on and on. So the Hall of Famers that have been inducted, that, that's another, again, that you can't, I know I haven't been in a lot of industries, but I've talked to people in other ones, and I can't say it enough. This is a tight-knit one, a close one, and people really care, to your point. I mean, one word you didn't say, which I've always had for this industry, and I think I'm trying to pass along, is the passion. It's not just a job, it's building a business and having an ownership of that business, sometimes too close, but just a passion for what we do. And being in healthcare in our own little way, I think we're giving back to the community, and giving back. Hopefully we're putting a better product out there, whether it's a test or a glove or a mask. We, in our own little way, as as an industry, we're doing our part for, I think, the betterment of people's lives and people's health. And, that's big. I mean, again, nothing against people selling phones or real estate, but we are in the healthcare industry. And I think most of us know that and care about that, to do a better job and, do the best we can because of the impact it has on people's lives.
I think it came full circle for all of us during COVID, right? Of the impact across, I mean, especially you guys in lab, hence the Legends of Lab this year. How important, and for the first time, what we did. I can't, you mentioned earlier wanting to be a pharmaceutical rep. How many times in my career, oh, you sell drugs? Nope. Furthest thing from drugs. I sell anything else you see in a doctor office, surgery center, hospital, but not not drugs. And it is. And then when you talk about passion, for me, I think the one that comes to mind first and foremost that was more passionate about this industry was John Sasson.
Yep.
Moran too, very much
Yep.
Moran too. But
Another mentor.
yeah, I talk about this. I tell the story about Sasson all the time. And when I first got to Repertoire, we were hosting a distribution insights meeting, and John was speaking. He was nice enough to speak for it. Actually, it was the year he was going into the Hall of Fame. It was the first dinner that we ever did. And we were at registration that morning for the meeting, not the dinner. And there was a young rep that brand new to the industry, and he's getting his badge. And I'm behind the desk, making sure that they were getting everything they needed. And John was behind this young man. And the kid tells, I can't remember who was Alicia, who was working for us at the time, but he's like, "Hey, this is my first meeting. I'm brand new to the industry." And John walks up and puts his arm around this guy. This kid has no idea who John Moran or John Sasson is.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Come with me." And he walked him into the breakfast where we had breakfast set up, and he introduced him to probably 15 people as his friend. And that just was the passion and the relationships of this business. I tell that story a lot because it had a huge impact on my life. Jonathan, you're probably one of the biggest fans or cheerleaders of the distribution sales rep in our industry. I would hope to be one myself. I tout the value of the distribution rep constantly. You talk a little bit about the value of those dealer reps over the years, and maybe some of the ride days you've done and some of the fun you've had with distribution. And I'll give you a little name that might help you with some of it. I actually talked to Jay Keene this week for a few minutes. But anyhow, just give a little bit of the JO love for the distribution sales rep and distribution companies.
Absolutely. I mean, I know one of the questions you guys were posing earlier was how many ride days did you do? Well, considering I started out as a territory rep myself, probably in the years of doing that, and to this day, I still wish I had a territory. It's the greatest job ever. But I rode around with so many just on my own territory and learning from these guys that controlled the accounts or knew their accounts and knew exactly what to talk about and getting access. I mean, I can go on and on about the distribution reps. I've probably had thousands of them. I still go to ride-alongs when I can, when I'm with one of our Sekisui reps. I love going to see accounts. I've always been a manager that wants to see what the people using our product have to say about the product, what their needs are, what their pain points are. And that all starts with the distribution rep. As you know, Scott, when we go out there, even to these days, I call these guys and go, "Yeah, you can bring Jonathan. He and I worked together 20 years ago," or, I still know him. So these distribution reps do bring all that. First and foremost, access. Second of all, the knowledge, the product knowledge. They sometimes, know so many products and are so versed on them, as well as how they know exactly when to talk about a product and where it fits in that practice. And as you know, some of these guys and gals that have done it for a long time, I should say ladies, men, whatever, the account goes, "What do you recommend so-and-so distribution rep? And if you believe in it, I do." So again, I think that really sums up all the value they do. And I know there's a lot of transition going now, and I would tell anybody, the new people coming in distribution, is be passionate about your territory, your customers. Remember, don't take them for granted, and always be bringing value. I think we always got to go back to our own value prop as a distributor, as well as the manufacturer, of what value is. I mean, obviously price is going to be part of the conversation, but it needs to be the third or fourth thing you talk about. You need to talk about, obviously, what it works for the workflow. What does it mean to the count? What is the, sensitivity or specificity in our product, whatever it takes about the product, first and foremost. And then you can always talk about, obviously, where you can save them money or give them a better option. But again, distribution reps are great. Couldn't be here without them. And I've got so many of them that are friends to this day, and I've been in this game for 35 years. So great stuff.
You got any good, funny ride day stories?
Yeah, oh God, too many to count, as you know. Some I can't say during this interview, obviously, but no, I mean, they're all very G-rated. But yeah, I mean, there's been so many different ones. I don't even know where to start. I mean, there's been some legends, obviously, in the lab that have gone on, whether they were with McKesson or with back in the day, Rome Barker, which is now Henry Schein, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, all these wonderful reps. I mean, again, I could go back to some of them. Some of my best times were with Chris Poole and did many with him. Chris Poole is a long time Henry Schein rep, and he was always fun to be with, always had great access. Mike Ludwig, another great guy that I've worked with a lot over the years. These guys are still doing it. T. Overton, I could go through everybody at McKesson as well. So there's it really not hard to specific. I mean, gosh, I'm trying to think of one. I can think of one even when Mike McCarthy, when he was back with Dur Fillauer. Mike McCarthy, works for us for a while and is now working for Scott Maneke. He took me into an account, and I will tell this one on me. And he said, J.O., whatever you do, watch your language and watch watch what you say. And I know why you're laughing.
Speaking of speaking French.
Speaking of French and Brad's degree in that. So again, in my younger days, and Scott, you'd say even in my older days, I sometimes don't even know if I might say a French word, if you will, and not know I'm really not saying it. But sure enough, let's just say in that call, I let a few choice non-PC words fly to the account when they were talking about a competitor, which is in my younger days. I was a little feistier. And you should have seen Mike McCarthy's eyes blow up, and he's like, OMG, and and he was looking at me like, stop. And I'm, of course, just, young and stupid and just like, oh, what? We come out of there and he's like, that guy was a deacon in his church. He's told me not to bring you back again. So I know that's probably not the best story to tell, but again, I did take that to heart and learn from it. But there's a lot of those good stories. And, but most accounts, that's another thing, again, about these accounts and people sell to. They want to help you help them, if you will.
Right.
They guide you, and especially when you're young, you're still learning it. And people like to talk about themselves. And you ask a question, they're like, "Yeah, this is what we're missing," or "Here's a pain point," or "I could see your product here or there." So again, I've been so blessed and lucky, or all the above, just to do this. So great times.
Yeah, I think one of the most memorable ride days I ever had, I was with a PSS rep. I can't remember his name, but his territory was Newark. And which is scary enough in and of itself. And we were walking most of the territory. So he found a parking spot and he's like, hey, you bring your walking shoes because we're going to be on the pavement today. It's too hard to find parking spots, whatever. Right. We'd gotten through probably our third or fourth call and we're walking down the road and all of a sudden, boom. And we both look up and this dude got hit on a bike right in front of us.
Oh my.
I was done for the day. I could not get the sound out of my head or the visual. And he's like, are you kidding? He goes, that happens like once a week around here. Like, you got to take me to the car, dude. I cannot call on another account after witnessing that.
It sounds like Newark,
yeah.
A long time rep that's worked with me, Carl Olish, for 30 plus years. He's Mr. New York. So we've had those same exact kind of calls go down with or without a distributor rep, and car wrecks and all kinds of stuff. And just that whole Northeast, sometimes you gotta hang in there and put up with or go toe to toe with the New Yorkers. That's for sure.
Absolutely. As we're talking through some of this and some of the fun stuff, and I did want this podcast to be fun and just have a conversation with you and talk about all of our, funny stories, because there's hundreds of them that have happened throughout the years. I think of doing sales meetings and some of the crazy stuff that happened in sales meetings, because you're dealing with sales reps and funny stuff's going to happen and you're going to embarrass yourself. But we're talking about the legends of lab, and I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention Gary and Steven, Lover. Any good stories from the old Quidel days with you guys?
Oh God, yes. So many, and some of them, they got to tell. But especially with Gary and Steven, Gary was obviously, as we all know, Gary is a handsome man. And I remember specifically when he was working for me, making calls, we go in and literally I think this was up Virginia a while ago, but we walk in, all of a sudden I hear all this whispering, and I'm following in Gary just to see how he's doing. I was his manager at the time. And all of a sudden all the girls were like whispering underneath their breath, Gary's here, Gary's here. Like every single nurse, med tech, female came running up to see Mr. Gary Etheridge. And it was so obvious. And I was, I didn't think I was chopped liver back in those days. Obviously, not so much to look at now, but I'm kind of like, hey, what am I, chopped liver? But, Gary God was on the scene, and everywhere he went, it was like the Pied Piper. But, not only is Gary, a good looking fella, he is a great guy. He's a man's man. He's really a super fantastic guy. But that story always sticks with me every time I walk in somewhere with, all the praise that coming for Gary.
You should have had the mock turtleneck on back then. You would have been out in
well,
front.
That's the higher that, chin there, I guess. Yeah, that was a funny story. And Stephen, as you know, and Stephen will appreciate this with that accent, he's lived in the United States his whole life, Hell's Kitchen in New York, but he still has a little bit of the Puerto Rico lingo, and he would always mispronounce words. We'd go into accounts, and I remember one time he's like, oh, and he was talking about product. He goes, Quidell's got cats. And I'm like, Quidell's got cats. And he goes, no, I meant to say they have, the catch of these products, or the cachet of these products. I'm like, Stephen, you sound like you said cats. Just roll over laughing in front of the count. He's another one, Stephen's such a good dresser. He's a great dancer, but also a great, great friend. But, these stories with those guys, and Lover, he's affectionately known as Dancing Don.
Dancing Don, baby.
And we always call his pink J, he goes, J-O, it's salmon, or coral, not pink. I think he finally got rid of that jacket, but so many good times of being on the dance floor with Don. He and I'd have our share of dance-offs at these national sales meetings and all this stuff where we gathered. But
Don was so good to me as a young rep of just making sure I was included in stuff. And to your point, I always remember Don's jackets. Jackets. But yeah, he was dancing Don. J.O., as you kind of start to look at your career, and obviously you're not near the end of it, but as you start to look at it, what is like some of the legacy that you'd like to leave here in the industry? And I know that's kind of a tough question, my legacy, but you know what I'm saying? Like some of the things that you've done and seen and that you want to pass on to the next generation.
Well, again, legacy, that's a tough word for all of us to talk about. And I don't know if it's more of a legacy or how did this guy get in here, but I'd like to think that, again, goes back to passion and bringing that passion and enjoying, I guess to quote Mark Twain or somebody, I'll give them credit, that if you find a job that you like, you'll never work a day in your life. So I'm probably saying that right, but I think the legacy is I've always enjoyed what I do. Yeah, come on, it's called work. It's a 4-letter word. It's not F-U-N, fun necessarily, but it was always, at the end of the day, I felt like I got something accomplished. Whether I sold something or moved closer to the account or landed a new account. So if I can inspire, I don't want to say the word inspire, because then again, it sounds like I'm talking about myself, but a legacy is bring that passion, desire, or care about what you do and the products that you're representing. And if you don't believe in your products, then your customer's not going to be. And I've been very lucky to work for 2 companies that had great products, stood behind their products. The people that made them care about what they made. Very lucky. So anywhere you go, I would say the legacy is, hey, what would J.O. do? I'd say he would care. He would do it. He wouldn't ask anybody to do it, that he wouldn't do it himself. And I've always said that to my reps, and I became a manager, like, well, why don't you handle this call? And I go, please let me. And sometimes they would tell me to shut up because, me, Scott, I'd go in there and start doing the sales pitch. And they're like, all right, let him go. Aren't you supposed to critique me? And I'm like, I'm having too much fun. So, hey, have fun where you can. And there's nothing wrong with being serious, but have fun being serious.
J.O., number one, thank you for being on the podcast with me today. And man, congratulations on the Hall of Fame. And You so deserve it. But if there's one thing I've learned from you, it is have fun. And you take yourself serious. And I've seen you get real serious and be very direct, even with a client. And but you can still have fun and you can still enjoy what you do every day. And I don't know that anybody in the industry values relationships more than you. And it's been fun to watch you work those relationships over the years and accomplish, what you guys have. And so very much appreciate you, man. And thank you for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you. Thank Pritch, and thank everybody there at Repertoire. I am overwhelmed. I'm sure I'll probably cry like a baby when we go to the HOF, but hey, at least Doug Harper helped me out last year by doing that.
Absolutely.
So it's just such a great industry and great friends. And yeah, it's thank you, I guess. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, man. It's going to be one hell of a night. I'm looking forward to it, bud.
Me too, bud.
Thank you, J.O.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, everybody. Appreciate you sticking through that with me and J.O. That was a great conversation. Like I said at the beginning, he's so passionate about the industry, just like we are here at Repertoire. And we're so blessed to be able to help be the glue to kind of keep everybody connected and talking to one another and educating each other and making everything that we do more fun. And we're in such a great industry, and I'm so thankful for it. I'm thankful to be able to host the Hall of Fame another year here in 2025 and to induct these three legends of the lab and just what they've meant to my career, all three of them in different ways. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and we will be back with another one very soon. Thank you.